So this is more supposed to be like a small, like technical workshop kind of say. It's not like for a presentation, get everyone on the same page, educational kind of session. So if you already know x402, the protocol, and know how people are using it as micropayment for like different kind of the services, especially on Base, people are creating all these like x402 like Rails like for like content creator, and you want to discuss and workshop on how to use, like how can we leverage x402 on Filecoin on-chain cloud services, please sit on the beanbag, like step forward, get closer to the flip chart so that we can map this out over there. And if you are not really familiar with x402 or just want to hear to learn, like sure, you can listen A. However, you don't have to be here, for the lack of better word to say. Cool. So for folks who knows Filecoin on-chain cloud and like want to talk about micropayment services, leverage x402, please like getting closer to Miro.
So I would like to start with describing a gap and an opportunity, and then see where we get from there. The gap I see is that right now with Filecoin on-chain cloud, as it is designed, we have an SP, which is storing data. We have FilBeam, which is acting as a trusted middleman, which is handling retrievals of data from users. And FilBeam is paying the SP in a USDFC. The problem with this is that it creates vendor lock-in. If you want to get paid retrievals with good quality, you have to go through FilBeam. If you want to go to the SP directly, you don't have a way how to pay for retrieval right now. And in my understanding, one of the selling points of Filecoin is to avoid vendor lock-in. FilBeam shouldn't be the only retrieval provider that is willing to pay SPs for retrievals. And so what we are missing, and this is the gap, is something that allows anyone, maybe other retrieval providers, maybe individual users, to have a way how to pay for retrievals. So that's the gap. At the same time, there is this whole x402 protocol, which is being pushed hard by Coinbase. Now Cloudflare joined the effort, and there is a lot of hype. And I was thinking it would be super cool if Filecoin can ride this hype and get more interest as being not only the storage solution, but also allowing AI agents to pay for data access. This is the opportunity I see. And the goal of this workshop is to come together and see what can we make happen, how can we join this. So from our perspective as Filecoin Beam, it would be awesome if we can find a way to do micropayments on a per request basis. I can imagine that from Filecoin Pay, it would be awesome if Filecoin Pay was an option how to do x402 on Filecoin, so that Filecoin can keep getting revenue from that. And maybe for Curio, it would be great to have some sort of doing micropayments for requests so that they don't have to rely on FilBeam only. But it's a lot of work. We need a protocol for micropayments. We need some implementation on the FilBeam. We need implementation on Curio side. So the first question, I guess, to answer is whether we have enough appetite to undertake this, whether we can get funding, whether we can get people to work on this, and who will be those people. Yeah.
Coming.
I personally think that it's going to become the standard if we like it or not, in the sense that I spoke to the guy who's like wrote the paper last week, because we're looking at that from a Kava as well, and he was saying Cloudflare is heavily investing, and Cloudflare I think runs like 24% or 25% of the world's websites, and they made a big announcement around this. And I just think like in the last year and a half, and I talked about it with Monos yesterday too, one of the challenges that has come up multiple times over and over again when we're at the Solana event or whatever, when we're talking with deep-in networks that are collecting data, is that they have the same challenge. They have to go and find buyers, and they have to go to all these federated like marketplaces, and even like, you know, we integrate with Snowflake. Snowflake has a marketplace. We talked to the guy who runs the marketplace. It's actually pretty cumbersome. You have to upload all your data in there, and then you have to like follow their format, and in the end, people are still, communicating with CSV files. So the point is that this is seen as an opportunity, at least right now, to make that data more accessible to agents that could potentially find and make use of this, and could be seen as an extra source of revenue. I don't know how to implement it, but the idea, the concept seems to resonate at this point. So no matter what, we should definitely look at it, because if you look back at 10 years ago or 15 years ago, when Amazon came out with S3, people were also like, oh, this is a proprietary format. Nobody's going to adopt this, but look where we are right now, right? So, and there was a standards body that was trying to create a new standard, and they lost. So.
Yeah, thank you. I feel the same. It's a huge opportunity, and the question is how can we seize it and leverage it to our benefit?
Yeah, from my explorations or past explorations of x402, I think we can really ship it fast. The bottleneck, at least like a few months ago, was just the client code for the x402 implementation was not that good. And yeah, I was just struggling with with the libraries to integrate Filecoin calibration. But yeah, otherwise, since we already have this EVM supported chain or the ET APIs, etc., I don't think it's really a big deal. I mean, I think this could be shipped fast if there's a joint effort from multiple parties. Let's say we form a work group, etc. I think this could be shipped like pretty fast.
So obviously, middle of this year, I built x402 for Filecoin, which was essentially building out a facilitator that did this. I did the implementation for EIP 3009 for USDFC to enable this because that's the required standard. The fundamental issue that we have with Filecoin is that we can't meet the same requirements for speed that Base does. And so our confirmation times for these are not within the API flow. So Base does 200 milliseconds for confirmation. So you can do a client, API server, facilitator, come back with a confirmation, and then the API will then return the data to the client because they know that they've been paid for. This is an issue if we were just to do it normally on Filecoin. If we can figure out an interface, a place where we're happy to put x402 as the payment wrapper around Filecoin Pay or FOC or wherever, that doesn't matter, then that's okay. But we're not going to be able to do, the issue I see reading your doc beforehand is that we have to figure out the right place to put it, because otherwise we're going to transform it too much to where it's not x402 anymore, or we don't sufficiently meet the requirements of the clients wanting to use it. That's the biggest challenge I see with what we're trying to do here.
Just comment on speed. Oh, sorry. Will, did you want to, or?
Okay, so you've got two things. You've got a payment protocol on chain that is a bunch of this specific X part of the x402. And then you've got, I'm requesting data and trying to get it back. x402 doesn't handle the case where you don't actually get the thing back. Like that.
Correct.
So it's assuming full trust of the arbitrary server. There's no feedback loop. If you don't get it, you just keep paying micropayments automatically and then not getting your resource. And we're not solving that.
No, we are
and
not
so
solving that.
one of the things here is if you make another middle layer that's just taking money and doing the x402, and then it goes back to Curio onto a piece that's sealed that then doesn't happen, you haven't solved the problem. You've just made this additional thing where now I'm leaking some money in realizing that I can't get the data rather than anything else. So I guess the question is, are we trying to solve retrievability, or are we just adding a payment rail to then not improve reliability? So like can we, I don't know. I mean, like, we can drop in a library, we can put an Nginx that does this. We can choose what chain, great. That will not solve reliability. So we should make it very clear when we're talking about this as like, this solves paid retrieval. This isn't solving paid retrieval, this is solving the paid, not the retrieval.
Correct, yes.
Yeah, I agree with Will. It's only like a communications protocol, and there's no like security guarantees, etc. But yeah, I think adoption is the first case, and then ensuring and adding like, I don't know, like security features, etc. There are ways to do it through like revocation secrets on like payment channels, etc. There's a way to add a security layer, but yeah.
Yeah, I would add to your points, Will, that I would say let's work one step at a time. And once we have the payments channel in place, I can imagine building more things on top of it. For example, we can do retrievals in small chunks so that you reduce the risk of not getting what you ask for. I can imagine building a reputation system for SPs, because now that you have paid for the retrieval, it might be more difficult to submit too much wrong data or like to cheat the system, because it costs you money to cheat the system. But we need to start somewhere, and I would say the first step is to have a payment channel allowing anyone to pay the SP, not only FilBeam.
Can I frame it in a mildly different way, which is that doing this for Filecoin is not about adding any guarantees or changing how retrievability is or any of these problems. This is about increasing the level of exposure we have to the new way in which clients want to retrieve data or pay for things.
Yeah, that's a great way.
That's all it is. This isn't providing any technical abilities that we don't currently have. It is just about increasing the exposure of the ways that people want to pay for stuff.
Yeah, and also make it more sustainable to run retrievals or to run a retrieval service for SPs.
Yeah, but it's just a case of this is like on the client side, it's about enabling them to pay for things in ways that work for them better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's an assertion there that the way that people want to pay for things, I'm hearing, to me, x402 looks like a bit of hype, and I buy hype. I mean, hype is useful. Is it actually what people want to use? Is there proof in people using this for real things beyond hype? For what sort of do we have a picture of what this is being used for, or the nature of use? Like
compute data. So yeah, basically you've already got remote compute being served via x402. You have data services being served. For example, Pinata and whatnot has already enabled x402 for putting stuff on IPFS, retrieving it from IPFS. So I agree, there's plenty of hype, but also at the same time, it's like,
and related, but to a previous point, there's no verification mechanism in here. So this looks to me like it's designed for trusted services, and we're trying to fit it into trustless services.
It's designed for microtransactions. So in the sense that
dealing with
if you
trusted
don't
parties,
get the thing back, it's
risk limited.
Risk limited to how much you sent them. And obviously it's on you to then verify that you got the thing back that you paid for, but you're talking 10 cents kind of deal.
Any other comment?
So maybe from our perspective at FilBeam, or when we think about retrievals, we want a way to allow clients to pay for retrievals using microtransactions. We can try to invent something Filecoin specific our own way, or we can just use what everybody's trying to use nowadays. Maybe it's not the best standard, but I think we will get more adoption if we follow the trend instead of building something ours.
So before I came here, I was working in the Interledger ecosystem and with web monetization for a long time. And the primary difference I see between something like this and web monetization is only the like 402 HTTP status code that gates the payment on, that like says you need to pay before we'll retrieve this to you. But in general, like they poured a lot of money into web monetization during Grant for the Web, and it didn't really take off much. right? Like this idea that you would send micropayments to somebody slowly in exchange for the content that they were sending you, even in like a tipping capacity, like didn't really pan out. And from a usability perspective, like it was very hard to get people to build apps that were using it. And they eventually realized that they needed more robust payment standards like Stripe that had subscriptions, that had, all of these other things layered on top of it. So I guess my question is, how is this different from some of the stuff that Interledger has been working on since 2019? And why is this a better approach?
As far as I'm aware, it's not different, except for the 402-bit. And currently, obviously, Interledger is a much more comprehensive set of protocols now, but they've already got they've got the hook in there to extend the schemas for the various ways, so subscriptions, so on. That they've got that placeholder. They haven't done it yet, but it's there. I think the biggest. I think the biggest thing is hooking it into HTTP as just a thing that's straightforward. Like, yeah, the crypto is not the main bit.
Coming.
I spent like 4 or 5 years working in payments earlier in my career, and I think there's 2 things that maybe address your concern here. One is nobody cares about payments. Everybody cares about what the payments achieve. So what they care about is getting their data back. The fact that they have to pay to get it back is like an inconvenience or a headache or a pain. And so what you really want with your payments is to be as seamless and as like frictionless and as smooth and as easy and everything as possible. And that's something that Stripe did very well. For example, you mentioned Stripe. And so I think this is like a bet of, if this is the direction the world is going, then by hooking into this protocol, we essentially like we're the lowest common denominator barrier for processing payments across Filecoin. In which case, over time, like it's like payments are like a very strong network effect. And so if other people use x402 and then we use x402, then all of a sudden everybody's using x402, and so all of a sudden it just kind of works. And it's kind of like Visa. Like Visa did this thing over many, many years, and now like it's like everybody can kind of like interact with Visa. This is like an older incarnation of it. But like you just don't want to like invent payments from scratch. It is a huge mess. It is a huge pain. And so like you really want to expose yourself to like the highest volume as fast as possible. So it's a bet, and we'll see. But like if x402 happens to become like one of a set of standards for payments, then being integrated with that is going to be like really valuable over time.
Yeah, so I guess my question is maybe more about that. What it sounds like there's strong signals from Coinbase and Cloudflare, but like what says that there were strong signals from Mozilla and a bunch of people with web monetization for a long time, and it never really took off because it didn't achieve that kind of network saturation you need for a payments network. So what about the signals we're seeing around x402 make us more confident that it is the right bet?
I don't know about signals per se, but I think the environment is much different than in 2019, since with the AI agents, etc. I think the AI agents are the big bet here.
I don't think anyone disagrees that this is a bet. I think we would all agree that this is a bet, but I think the market conditions and the technological conditions of today are different to like when Interledger was coming out. Like you still have a system in which now look, until Visa and MasterCard get rid of the whole you have to be a person to use a credit card thing, crypto is the easiest way that an agent and the legal way that an agent can spend money without it being directed by a human, right? They'll obviously get rid of that because they'll want to be involved as well. But it's a case of this has got traction because of various things that are happening now. Will it be long term? Maybe, maybe not. at the end of the day, I don't think that's the hardest thing about this, though. Like, whether it goes or not is one thing. I think the question is, going back to my initial point, figuring out where we draw that boundary and put x402 is a case of, like, that decision either makes this a huge amount of work for us, or it is a case of we enable it with a small lift. And to Will's point, which I don't disagree that it doesn't add any verifiability to this system, but it does add ease of access if we put it in the right place. So I think the question is where we put it on a technical level to wrap Filecoin Pay or to FilBeam or whatever it is to make this as easy as possible.
Like, can you explain what that looks like? If Filecoin is not fast enough, what's the solution?
So there are different ways how to approach it. One of them could be running IPC subnet that can have faster finality. Yesterday they were mentioning their block time is under 1 second, which is still more than 50 milliseconds offered by base, but for AI agents, 1 second is probably good enough. So that's one option we could explore. Another option, but now we are compromising on the x402 promise, is to leverage payment rails, where you have a lockup between the client and the SP. And now the SP doesn't need to wait until the transactions are confirmed on the chain, because they know only the SP can charge that payment rail. Nobody else can touch that money. So as long as the SP receives a signed payment from the client, that will be then forwarded to the payment rail. They don't need to wait for the transaction confirmation because nobody else can submit transactions to that payment rail. So this is kind of like an escrow-based scheme.
But then you completely lose the x402 aspect of it. Like that goes, realistically,
Yes.
the easiest lift I see is a USDC-based proxy that goes in. So basically, it then does the entire translation. It does translations into Filecoin Pay world as some way of, like, basically we do it that way, and that's just the easiest lift that doesn't compromise on this protocol, exposes us to whatever we want, like the exposure of everyone using it. Obviously, it's not ideal from an economic perspective, but
Yeah, I think it could be achieved a bit different with some modifications by using a custom facilitator in Miro's example. But yeah, we could still retain some aspects of 402, like majority of them, but just add some slight modifications there with a custom facilitator.
As long as the client stays the same, then sure. Like, it doesn't matter. As long as the client interaction and the API server interaction offering the x402 like service or data or whatever, like, as long as that's the same, like, yeah. Because in our case, the API provider is going to be, like, associated with Filecoin. So as long as the client can use a standard off-the-shelf client SDK and still interact with it, it can do whatever translation we want. It can, yeah. I think that's a reasonable way to go about it.
So I just want to, so I was having coffee with Tim this morning, and one of the things we were talking about a lot was how do we validate these hypotheses before investing a lot of engineering effort? Because, like, Adrian, you just said no one's denying this would be a big bet, right? Coinbase, Cloudflare, they have a lot of resources to invest in big bets. We are not at the stage in our ecosystem where we have the same level of resources we can invest in big bets without strong validation that this is a good bet to make. I heard you mention traction at one point. Like, is there a lot of traction already of users using x402? And if so, what kinds of customers is that traction coming from? Do those customers align with the customers that we're trying to go after for Filecoin on-chain cloud? If not, what can we do or what should we be doing to validate that this is the right bet to make before we spend a bunch of time doing the engineering architecture questions that Will and others have raised?
Just plugging that we have 5 minutes.
That's a great question. I'm glad you raised it, and I don't have the answers. Anyone else in the audience?
Rod said, is there a simple version of this that we could start with? Or is there something that you can put out that is not a crap ton of work that allows you to, because like, your strategies in product management are like, you can go and ask people. So you can go to your user group and be like, all right, who of my current users are using x402 payments elsewhere? And so we can maybe ask that from the builders cohort. At least some of them are, but mostly in an experimental basis, right? And a lot of them probably aren't. So we could get what % of current builders who are building with Filecoin on-chain cloud in an early environment are using this. Another question we can ask is, x402 payments in Filecoin on-chain cloud. Click here to learn more. Track how many people click the thing. There's nothing behind it as a form. Why do you want to use this? And you try and collect feedback from people before you do it. You put something out there. You could also put out like a very minimalist thing that is like very small, and then you, again, are collecting the signal. Do people actually try to interface with this thing and then get frustrated because it doesn't do all the bells and whistles and complicated things? So maybe instead of trying to use it for retrieval payments, could you try using it for something that's like very simple, like maybe x402 connecting to Decipher that just transfers your USDC in base to USDFC on Filecoin using x402. And maybe that still is a little bit complicated, but at least you're operating in an environment in base where x402, you get to lean on all of Coinbase's existing support. We don't even need to implement x402 in Filecoin, because in Filecoin, we're just swapping the USDC into USDFC on Filecoin, and so we don't even need to have the x402 contract running inside of the Filecoin network. So like maybe that's the hypothesis, and you'd be like, great, use it here, and then we can see how many people use it there, and that can also be a signal of like, all right, how valuable would that be to bring into our ecosystem? So like, those are a couple of like product spitball ideas for how to not go and do a ton of work, but go and do a little thing that gets us a lot more signal to then do the right thing.
To be clear, there is no smart contract for it. It's baked into how the ERC20 works with the EIP 309. So that's already done for USDFC. So it's just a case of how we want to do these facilitators, and there's a whole bunch of open source ones. It's really not that big a deal. It's just the actual user experience is suboptimal. That's the only question here. And then obviously, well, that's the only question on the technical front. That's the technical front question. The other question is then, of course, whether we bother. But yeah, like, we need the validation, agreed. But just on the technical front, that's all that's required.
Thanks. Since we are running out of time, what would be the best next step, and who wants to kind of be involved in this discussion going forward? We can form a working group.
I don't know.
We need to do the validation and a bit of market research. Any last thoughts or comments or questions before we wrap it up? Well, thank you all.
Thank you,
Better than
Miro.
expected.